Hello, and welcome to our webinar on how to boost your training return on investment using the Peer Learning Group approach. My name is Deborah Laurel. I am the co-founder and Chief Learning Officer for the Peer Learning Institute. Before we start, please think about whether your effort and investment in management training has paid off in the way you wanted. Please keep your answer in your mind throughout the webinar. Thank you. We have 4 objectives for today's webinar. The first, to explain why the current training return on investment is so low and why we need a new learning model. Second, clarify why peer learning groups present a new learning model that achieves superior results. Third, discuss how you can apply peer learning in your organization. And fourth, review how peer learning groups boost training return on investment. Let's begin by explaining why the current training return on investment is so low and why we need a new learning model. Professional development is important, and it shows in numbers. According to the 2018 Training Industry Report, U.S. companies have spent $30 billion on management and leadership development in 2018 alone, and this number is expected to grow. Unfortunately, the majority of this investment is wasted. A learning curve study shows that if you don't consistently reinforce what you learn, you forget 90% of it within 30 days. This results in a 90% failure rate in terms of retention and application. Such a failure rate is typically not tolerated by companies, but for some reason, this is condoned when it comes to training and professional development. It's not due to the quality of the training necessarily. Rather, the reasons have to do with the nature of training as a learning method which has serious limitations. Let's review some of these limitations. For the first one, and a major reason for training inefficiency, is that in traditional learning, learning is separated from work. It is separated from work in several ways. First, it is literally situated outside of the day-to-day work world. The content is general in scope and often a compilation of best practices from somewhere else that may not necessarily apply to the current organization. And third, it's finally separated in time because although the topics may be interesting, they are not of immediate need or urgency. This creates a need for some transfer mechanism which is typically lacking. Participants need to take what has been general and make it more specific to their organization. But even the best training transfer mechanism will not save knowledge or skills that are not applicable to the current job. Traditional training has generic rather than relevant content. Traditional training does not have a specific end user in mind. It has to be general and theoretical in nature to meet the needs of a large and diverse audience, so it is not likely to address the specific issues that your managers face. Traditional training is not branded to your company. It does not include the values and culture your company has. This makes it more impersonal and harder for your managers to relate to. Traditional training offers little to no time or opportunity to practice. This is because over the years, the amount of time available for training has diminished considerably, and now more information needs to be crammed into the sessions, so that leaves little time for practice. Once the participants leave the training room, they are faced with a backlog and their current daily tasks, so they still have no time to practice. They need to have sufficient time to practice over a period of time to consolidate their new skills. Because unless the managers feel confident in their competence, they will not risk trying newly learned behaviors. Traditional training offers little to no motivation to try new behaviors. Research shows that instructor-led training does not motivate participants to apply new knowledge. The participants do not generate the content, so they do not have an investment in learning it. Since the content is generic, it does not relate directly to their needs and interests, so they lack an intrinsic motivation to learn and apply what they have learned. And with no motivation, there is no transfer of learning and no results. Traditional training offers little to no time for reflection. In traditional training, a shortage of time and the need to cover as much content as possible means that few programs can build in time for participants to reflect on what they've learned. And when they have no time to reflect, they cannot process it and generate takeaways. Studies have actually shown that time for reflection can cement new learning more effectively than increasing the number of examples or applications. Traditional training offers little to no workplace support to do things differently. Often training is just a requirement or a perk, and it is not treated as important for the organization. This means there is little to no follow-up or expectation that new learning will be applied. Participants perceive that workplace support is necessary for knowledge transfer and behavioral change. And when there is a lack of workplace support, there is a lack of the psychological safety that's necessary for participants to feel that they can take risks by proposing new ideas and trying new behaviors. The limitations that come from the essential nature of training show that training as it is practiced now has little impact on performance, and that a new learning model is needed. The model we want to focus on is the peer learning group model. Let's review how peer learning can overcome the limitations that we have described and how peer learning can offer superior results. Research that resulted in the 70-20-10 model found that approximately 70% of learning comes from experience, experimentation, and reflection on the job. 20% of learning comes from working with others, and 10% of learning comes from planned learning solutions, such as traditional formal instructor-led training and reading. The peer learning group model eliminates the disadvantages associated with traditional classroom training and e-learning. It does this through a primary focus on the 70% of learning that comes from work performance. Let's clarify how peer learning groups work and why they offer a new model of learning that achieves superior results. Peer learning groups are comprised of up to 6 managers with the same management challenge. They facilitate their own conversation, which means there is no need for an external trainer or a consultant. They meet on their own schedule in their own worksite. They work together through a structured group sharing and learning process over 2 90-minute sessions that are separated by a month of practice. And in those sessions, they are guided by our roadmap and supplemental best practices. The learning process of a peer learning group is nicely captured in this U model of change and development. The learning process begins in the first 90-minute session with exploring the issue, for example, how to delegate better. Participants identify the issues, clarify their own experience, and learn new knowledge and skills, in this case, 6 levels of delegation. After that, they go back to their worksite and practice. Since managers routinely delegate work, there is no need for a special time set aside for this practice. They can apply their new ideas immediately. They can do small experiments to try new things, to learn new approaches. After that month of practice, they return for the second 90-minute session, to reflect with their group of peers on their new skills. They collectively develop new skills on a higher level than when they started, and they complete the learning cycle. Explore, practice, and experiment, and reflect. They can move on to another topic and follow the same process. The overall learning objective is that by the end of the peer learning group program, managers will competently and confidently handle specific management challenges in a manner consistent with the organizational culture and context. In addition, participating in peer learning groups not only gets managers to better performance now, it also develops a new growth mindset for learning, collaborating, and teaming in the workplace for the future. Let's compare traditional learning and the peer learning group. In traditional learning, the focus is on eliminating weaknesses, so learning is focused as a result of a skills deficit. In the peer learning group, learning builds on and expands on the skills and knowledge of the participants, so it reinforces their strengths. Traditional learning assumes that knowledge must be brought from the outside through some external consultant or subject matter expert. In the peer learning group, the explicit and tacit knowledge and experience that the managers already possess is validated. In traditional learning, learning is separated from work for the reasons already discussed. In the peer learning group, learning and working are integrated. The participants create the content of relevance to them and their work, and they put it to use immediately. In traditional learning, it offers generic solutions, whereas in the peer learning group, it creates specific solutions for real-life challenges in the organization. Traditional learning offers no time for practice and reflection, whereas practice, reflection, and experimentation are built into the process of the peer learning group cycle. Traditional learning offers no motivation to make changes. In the peer learning group, however, participants are there because they are eager to change and implement new strategies to deal with the challenges that they are struggling with. So they have strong intrinsic motivation to learn and apply what they've learned. In traditional learning, there is no workplace support for doing things differently. In the peer learning group, managers get support from their peers, which gives them the psychological safety to speak openly and try new behaviors. Learners must adapt the new knowledge and apply it in traditional learning, which means that they have to translate general information into specific strategies for their particular situation. This creates a difficult transfer problem. In the peer learning group, there is no transfer problem because solutions are immediately usable and used. Let's discuss how you can apply peer learning in your organization. We have identified a number of ways to use peer learning groups. Here are 7 of them. First, as a standalone professional development program, as we've been discussing. Second, as a tool for off-site management retreats. Third, a part of regular monthly management meetings. And fourth, an in-house university program drawing on the many learning modules under our topical categories that cover most management issues. Fifth, as an extension of other management development programs, particularly those programs that lack practice and reflection in the course of the day. Sixth, as additional support for individual coaching for your managers. And seventh, as a way to introduce new managers to your organizational culture. LinkedIn Learning's most recent workplace learning report showed that interpersonal skills rank among the top priorities for learning and development. What you see before you on this slide is a matrix of our topical categories, and you will notice that they focus primarily on interpersonal skills, being a manager, managing change, engaging people, leading meetings, developing staff, and resolving conflict. You can mix and match modules from different topical categories to create learning programs that address your manager's specific needs. Let's look at how our clients have used peer learning. In the first situation, we had a medium-sized insurance company with long-term managers. They had ingrained management routines, and the managers were operating on autopilot. There was little substantive communication and collaboration between the managers. The company created 5 peer learning groups strategically composed of managers who first needed to collaborate more and second had little personal interactions between themselves. The groups chose the following topics: teaming, engaging people, communication, being creative, and leading meetings. The results were that there was more energy and collaboration between managers because of the lateral relationships created during the peer learning group process. It reduced time to decisions. There was more bottom-up initiative and better engagement of employees. Senior management also had an opportunity to see their managers in a new light that was not shown when they followed their typical routines. In our second case, we have a government agency with offices dispersed throughout the state. The challenge was a low budget for professional development, so training focused primarily on technical issues and compliance, not general management skills. Because the managers were dispersed throughout the state, they had little personal contact or support. The agency added peer learning groups to the quarterly leadership meeting of managers at the headquarters. In these 6 peer learning groups, there was a mix of headquarters and field managers. Their topics: being a manager, problem solving, leading, developing staff, managing change, and serving customers. The managers discovered that they had more similarities than differences. Cooperation improved between the field and headquarters, and the managers felt empowered and recognized as a source of knowledge and expertise in the organization. The agency was also pleased to find a cost-effective way to add a professional development program at a minimal additional cost. In the third situation, it was somewhat different in that the managers came from different health tech startups rather than from the same organization. These were young managers with limited management skills working in early healthcare startups with little guidance and huge expectations from the top. They were also considerably isolated because they had few other managers with whom to collaborate. Their focus was on surviving in the management jobs and managing up while maneuvering through the startup culture. These 5 managers formed a peer learning group to share their experiences and develop better management strategies. They chose as their topics managing up, getting things done, managing energy, and asserting yourself. They found many similarities between their situations and learned useful techniques to work in a startup environment. They enjoyed their experience so much that they created a peer support group that continued after completing the peer learning program. At this point, we have discussed why the current training return on investment is so low and why we need a new learning model. We have discussed why peer learning groups present a new learning model that achieves superior results. And we have discussed how you can apply peer learning in your organization. Now let's look at how peer learning groups boost training return on investment. We mentioned already that peer learning is affordable and cost-effective. Let's look at the numbers. The calculation in this example compares training costs for 18 managers in 2 ways: traditional off-site training, and in-company peer learning groups. We assumed a 2-day off-site training and an equivalent 4 peer learning group sessions. We assumed average costs as per industry research and real charges that we apply. In our case, we charge a setup fee for initiating the program and a per module price. As you can see, the differences are substantial. Because there are no travel costs and the fees for the peer learning program are much lower than training tuition, the per person cost is very small. The overall cost for peer learning is 20% of the cost of training, which means there is an 80% cost savings. And there are other benefits. Overall, managers gain just-in-time knowledge and skills. They learn the exact amount necessary. They access each other's knowledge and experience. They strengthen collaborative skills, have their knowledge and expertise valued, and share challenges and test new behaviors because of the psychological safety created in the peer learning groups. Overall, managers benefit with more collaborative management teams, faster communication and decision-making, lower cost and effort to deliver skills, reduced organizational silos, empowered and validated managers' capabilities, and organizational knowledge retained and shared that would otherwise be lost when more senior managers leave the organization. The bottom line results: companies that use peer learning have 36% more net revenue per employee. They have a 9% higher gross margin and are 4.6 times more likely to anticipate and respond effectively to change. Hopefully, you now see how peer learning groups will help your effort and investment in management training pay off the way you want. So what is your next step? Are you ready to focus your management training on performance, to increase your return on investment, to become more competitive? We have 3 steps that you could take. All of them are free. First, you can try it for yourself. We offer a free 45-minute monthly virtual peer learning group that is designed specifically for learning and development professionals. Called Peer Learning Tuesdays, they occur the first Tuesday of every month. At that time, you will learn with your peers and discuss major learning development topics of concern, such as developing leaders, dealing with change, resolving conflicting expectations, and changing attitudes and behaviors. This will give you an opportunity to try out a peer learning group and see for yourself how it works, while gaining additional insight and tools to handle difficult challenges. Our second option is to test it with your managers. We offer a free 90-minute introductory peer learning group experience workshop. This will give you an opportunity to see how well your managers respond to the method. And third, you can plan it for your organization. We offer a free 45-minute strategy session. This will help position the peer learning group program in your organization and show how it can be integrated with other management development initiatives. We mentioned earlier that there are a number of different applications for peer learning groups. In this strategy session, we'll explore what would be the most beneficial for your organization. Take the first step. Contact us. You can reach us at our website at thepeerlearninginstitute.com. You can call us at 608-255-2010, or you can email us at info@peerlearninginstitute.com. Thank you so much.